Welcome back to OTB, the fun, adventurous video side of Cartilage Free Captain. Today we have a very special treat. I would say it's only second to like Springsteen at the Garden. We have Dustin himself here with us, the managing editor of Cartilage Free Captain for SB Nation, and with all the wild news today, he has come on. So thank you so much for being here, Dustin.
Gentlemen, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And of course, my favorite smile, Andres, he's here as well to give his insight.
I feel like I don't get an introduction akin to Bruce Springsteen. What? I don't. All right, chopped liver.
You're more like Coldplay at Red Rocks.
You're making it worse. You're making it so much worse. Oh my! I might walk out of here. Honestly.
Yeah, so what a wild few days as a football fan. After the announcement, if you want to call it that, of the Super League, basically starting late Saturday, early Sunday, I was certain there wasn't going to be anything to top the news this week. I could have sworn we would have seen Mourinho past Man City, but I woke up this morning and I saw like 31 notifications on Twitter. And I found out, of all things, from Harry Kane's Instagram page when I first woke up, saying, thanks, Gaffer, for everything. To Tottenham fans, I have to wonder what's the bigger story, but surely it has to be the announcement of the Super League. For those who aren't truly up to speed yet, 12 teams, the big six from the Premier League, 3 from Italy, 3 from Spain, have created this league/competition where we involve midweek fixtures that would be played throughout the regular season to determine essentially the best of the best. The response from UEFA and FIFA in kind has been similar to something you might see in a Cold War buildup. They have met this breakaway with the banning from domestic competitions, Champions League, and even saying players who potentially partake will be restricted from representing their country, which is obviously the dream for everyone. And it's strange because it is truly, as Gary Neville put it, a war on football. And the sad thing is there isn't really a side you can root for. It's a war between two bad guys almost. You have the vastly wealthy and corrupt on the one side, and they're facing off against the vastly wealthy and corrupt. And the only real casualties probably is going to be football fans and footballers themselves, and of course those football clubs who aren't as financially viable. So I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to start off with two. The first and probably the most dramatic of the questions is it too late to backtrack here, or are we, I'm not going to call it the end of football as we know it because that would be super, but is it more of the start of something maybe vastly different? And second, where do you see this kind of settling at the end of the day? Obviously, Florentino Perez came out today and said that there's no reason why a Super League cannot exist with a domestic league. Dustin, I'm going to start with you. Do you feel that's true? Initial thoughts? Kick things off here.
Well, I'm going to start off by saying this thing as a whole, it's garbage and it's a hot mess. And this is not really ever something that I thought that we'd see Tottenham Hotspur involved with. So it's as big of a shock to me as it is to probably everyone else who's watching this at the moment. In some ways, this has been coming for a long time. I think the writing's been on the wall with the way that, UEFA has been writing things with the Champions League and other domestic leagues that, money is king, and it has been forever. And I think that fans who don't recognize that have been hiding from it or have been, putting their heads in the sand, don't want to think about it because it's here. It's been happening for a long time. That does not, however, excuse what the Gang of 12 have done in the Super League to start this off, because what they've done is a naked power and money grab, and it's frankly incredible that we're even in this situation, and I'm a little bit flabbergasted. The first question you asked was, do you see these things coexisting? And yeah, I would say I would. I think there's a path where. It's not unusual for me to think that there are teams that are not happy with the way that UEFA is running the Champions League, for example.
Sure.
That seems perfectly reasonable to me. The way they've gone about expressing that frustration is to then create something that's even worse than the Champions League, and even less equitable than what we have right now. And that's where things are going to fall apart for me. the website and the press release for the Super League has said that they want it to coexist with domestic leagues. I believe they do. I don't think anyone, least of all the clubs that are involved in the Super League, really want to be kicked out or want to leave their domestic leagues. I think it's incredibly important to them and to their players. Sure. But it's hard to square that circle with what you see of this incredibly inequitable money. I mean, there are huge sums of money that are being thrown around here, and it's hard for me to square that circle with wanting the best for football and still racking up, hundreds of millions of pounds in revenue over the next few years.
Andres, I'm going to shift to you, and just to kind of piggyback off something Dustin brought up as far as the players. Jasper Muller, the chairman of the Danish FA today, came out and said that it would be possible potentially and I don't know if he's right or not, but it's something he came out and said, that a country's FA can greenlight potentially a player breaking their contract, and so it would allow players who aren't really in line with this new direction, it would give them a way out. Should it go in that direction, Andres? And feel free to try to answer the other question as well. But would you see players doing that?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to put that responsibility on players because these are their livelihoods at the end of the day. And these guys are also, I wouldn't expect that out of any player, right? That being said, they are in a unique position where they are the product that's being sold. They can't say, no, I will not participate in this because this is not right. I mean, it really does come down to morals, really. And I understand that, like to Dustin's point, money is king. 100%, right? Otherwise, Tottenham have no way of getting into this league. Let's be very clear about that because their success record historically is just absolutely trash, and this is coming from a huge Spurs supporter, right? But that being said, everything that is happening right now does feel very surreal because all of a sudden, there's no veneer, there's no illusion that these footballing clubs are anything but business ventures, right? For the extremely wealthy. This is just a bid to eliminate the volatility of the sport in order to safeguard investments. I mean, if you think about it, investing in a soccer club or in a football club is extremely volatile because there's millions of dollars riding on a lucky deflection or a lucky block or a collection of 11 individuals turning up for 90 minutes, right? So what they're doing is they're noticing this volatility, which obviously has been noticed in the past, but it's been exacerbated by the pandemic. And the pandemic has essentially shown that these top clubs, even though they're earning 300 mil, 400 mil, $500 million on an annual basis, that no one is safe from these black swan events. So they are protecting themselves. And of course, Spurs are dying to be part of that group because they can't get there through the pitch, right? They can't get there on pitch performances. They can't get through to the Champions League. So why not just buy your way in? So those are all thoughts that I've had on what's going on right now. As far as how they exist, can both competitions exist, domestic and this ESL? I think they're going to have to. To Dustin's point, the larger teams that are part of the ESL don't want to leave the domestic leagues. And the domestic leagues don't want them to leave. They're the whales. They're the ones that bring in the money. What is La Liga without Barcelona and Real Madrid, right? But at the end of the day, like these clubs know that. They know how much power that they have. And they're saying, we know that we are the most powerful and there's no governing body that can contain us. So we're just going to do what we want. We're choosing to stay part of this domestic league. We are choosing to partake in your World Cup, in your Euros, because otherwise we would just do it ourselves. That's what this is showing today, that there is absolutely no governing body that can control these billionaires because they can just buy their way out of everything. And it's something that we've seen Manchester City do with their Der Spiegel case. They essentially just said, look at our 45 lawyers to your 10. There's absolutely no way that you win this case. And it's because of the money that they have.
So to that end, and we've seen this a lot on Twitter, does anybody here actually feel it's a bluff and it's just a way to gain a foothold against a larger group?
I don't think it's a bluff. I think they're very serious about wanting to do this. I do, however, think that this could be the opening salvo, but could be a long series of protracted negotiations that could turn into something else. I don't see that the Super League is going away. I think it's going to exist in some format, one way or the other. I don't see this as a way to just get more concessions out of UEFA for the Champions League, but I do think that both sides are pretty bombastic and are pretty entrenched in their opinions right now. I mean, you've got the Super League and Perez today saying that they're trying to save football, which is laughable on its face. And you have UEFA on the other side who are trying to carve out as much of a sweetheart deal as they can from the Champions League so that they get their own cut of the money. And eventually, that's really where it is. And that's also why I'm both extremely disappointed that Tottenham are a part of this, but also I keep circling around to this. And I think, I've mentioned this off camera beforehand, before we start filming, is that, I keep circling around to the fact that I can completely understand why Spurs went for the brass ring now when they did, because the alternative to joining up with this cabal of super rich clubs is to be left behind. And with COVID having ravaged the finances for Tottenham over the past year, and with the stadium debt coming due, and so they run the real risk of being left behind by the rest of these super rich clubs and ending up a middle-sized club with a big stadium and no way to pay it off. And that's not to excuse it at all. It's just I can understand why they do it.
Yeah, I think just to quickly add on to that. Of all the 6 teams, let's just keep it focused on Premier League. Of the 6 teams that are there within the ESL, I think it makes the most sense for Spurs and Arsenal because they're the ones that are most at risk / have failed to qualify for Champions League the most consistently out of the last, 5-10 years, right? Maybe Manchester United is in that conversation as well. But at least for me, I started following Spurs because they did things differently, because they believed in building a sustainable model, and it wasn't about money. All of a sudden, it is about money for this club, for Dan Levy, who I've been a fan of actually ever since I started supporting Spurs. But I don't know if any other Spurs fans feel this way, but this does make it very, very difficult for me to remain a supporter / fan of Tottenham, because I do think it goes against absolutely everything that the club is, not to mention what the sport is. The sport is about competition. The sport is about the little guy beating the big guy. It's not about the big guys just kicking out the little guys and having their own competition by themselves. And maybe that's just me, and that's okay, but I just think it's completely wrong, and it's heartbreaking to see Spurs take this stance, as much sense as it makes economically.
Yeah, and that's probably the worst part of it. And I've seen some people support it on Twitter, on social media, and it's the odd tweet, but then all of a sudden you see like something has thousands of likes, and you're like, God, who's supporting this thing? Because when you really think about it, it ruins domestic football. And I'm not talking about in England and in Italy and Spain. I'm talking about places like Romania and Poland and all these countries where their goal is to win the league so they can get a crack at the big stage against the big clubs. That's being taken off the table currently as it stands, and that's also another side of the tragedy of it. And to your point, a lot of Daniel Levy's moves in years ago, going back to 2012, now make a little bit more sense, or at least I look at them now in a little bit of a different light. It was almost like preparatory moves as far as building up the club, making sure that they were financially viable enough, new training grounds, best stadium in the world. All these things were pointing towards what we ultimately thought was for the genuine success of the club for the fans. And maybe that's definitely still part of the goal, but now there's like a little bit of a different element involved in that. And for me, it feels wrong. I don't know.
It almost feels like we've been tricked, because this has been going on for a long time. So that's that famous season where we spent 0 on transfers to refresh the squad. Was this in the back of Dan Levy's head, just like getting ready for this, or like getting ready for the end of Pochettino's cycle because he succeeded too early? Like, that is heartbreaking, because the magic of the sport is what happens on the pitch, right? And like and nights like Amsterdam. and when we beat Real Madrid, and when we beat Borussia Dortmund, right? Or like the magic of Leicester City winning the league. Like those things are what make the sport what it is. And all of a sudden we have these outside interests saying, no, this is what the sport is. It's just about success, what we deem success to be, right?
And you know what? The sad irony of the Miracle of Amsterdam, as wonderful as that moment was, and as much as we'll all cherish it, it's that when you look at it, ironically, it's the 10th largest club in world football, knocking off an upstart, really good but small continental club.
Yeah.
And that's, that's a really cynical way of looking at it, but it's also kind of true that in terms of financial clout and power, Tottenham are a rich club. We are one of the richest clubs in world football. And we look at all the stuff that Tottenham have done in the past decade, and we've wanted to think of it as ambition, and I think there was ambition there.
100%
ambition to get better, ambition to play better. But it feels like a punch in the gut when we see the end result of that ambition turn into something like this.
100%, and that's you've surmised my feelings way better than I could have. So that's exactly how I feel. Just it feels like everything that I was proud of now that was supposed to be for a greater result is now it's twisted a little bit, and that's not sitting well with me. Let's wrap this up. I'm curious what you guys think. How do you feel? And we've kind of been circling around this question. I don't think we've gotten a definite answer. How do you feel this settles? What's the end game here? What are we looking at? Let's look at it from the perspective of Tottenham as a whole. It's we're looking at September of 2021. What's our fixtures look like? Where are we at?
I think it's too early to say at the moment. There's so much yet that has to happen. There's going to be lawsuits that'll come into play. There are still major decisions that are going to have to be made, not only by the Super League, but also by UEFA, that could really color how everything shakes out. Right now, everyone's backed into a corner, or they feel like they are, and so they're entrenched in their sides. I think we're going to have to wait and see how this really is going to shake out. I do, as I said before, I do expect that the Super League will be in existence in some form or another. I suspect the Champions League will also be in existence in some form or another. I don't know what that means, but I think both sides are probably going to have to come down from their perches a little bit and hopefully come to some kind of consensus in something, so that we don't end up with one or more parties, lighting a match and setting a fire and just watching the whole sport burn.
Is it good for football if UEFA wins?
No.
Is it good for football if these 12 teams get what they want?
Absolutely not. I think there's nothing good that's coming out of this.
Nothing good's going to come out of this.
I would say that if UEFA wins, it is good for football, because what we have now is a broken system. But let's be very clear, right? Like there's no relativist stance here. What is proposed by the ESL is far, far worse, because it's taking it to the extreme that we don't want to go. Instead of making things more equitable, they're going to the complete opposite, right? So you're absolutely right, John, when you said this is a war between two groups of billionaires and millionaires and greedy folks who, let's just be very clear, UEFA and FIFA are just mad because they're out of the money club, right? When this deal goes through. But that being said, even what we had literally a year ago, last month, that is more equitable than what is being presented. So maybe this is a good thing, because we can start having a real no holds barred conversation about the changes that need to happen to the sport, but not this.
But it's not going to be a change in the sport. It's just going to be a shifting and balance of power, and the power is going to switch. It's just going to shift to one side or the other. I don't think any side is really representing the fans' interest and other clubs around the world. I think it's really just whoever wins here is just going to garner more power, and I think both are bad, corrupt organizations, and really ultimately the only outcome is going to be losing, and I think that's going to be from unfortunately the fans' perspective. With that rich, cheery note, thank you, Dustin, for joining us on this video today. And thank you, Andres. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the insight. Everybody, we want to hear exactly what your thoughts are. We know you have the opinions. Everybody does. So like, subscribe, drop a comment. Let us know what you think. And as always, we will catch you on the break. Ooh, I got to say that with Dustin here. That was fun. That was the first time. Thanks, everybody.